in managing both the ransomware and then the distributed denial of service attacks on the network. And that we faced into that one. The media was very positive, reflected well on Auckland Transport and the council family. The system's now restored. We've noted violence, threats and aggressions in the past, and I'll just keep that in front of you. That is an important part of the health, safety and wellbeing of our teams, but it's also a reflection of some of the work we need to address as a community. On strategic issues, we're working well internally and with our Wakakatai counterparts in agreeing the next version of the asset management plan. This is very, very important to get right because it tells us and informs you as governors what the investment is required to maintain the level of service across our road network in particular. Our ratepayers and citizens of Auckland's got expectations around how that performs because 100% of them use it every single day in different ways. It's very important we get that right. You'll see us bring our feedback on what that is going to require through the LTP process. I'll take the road safety engineering program comment as noted, but there's stronger alignment between how we do that and needing the agreement of the local boards before projects delivered in the first place. And can I acknowledge the conversation we had with councillors and the board the other day and how we address some of those operating cost and capital cost investments that some very challenging choices will need to be made over the next for the next 10 years. Performance metrics, they're there before you. I think that's a good reflection of where we're at. Public transport boardings and reliability, we're meeting those targets, which I think is very good. Boardings, it's interesting. And you can ask us questions on this later, but clearly the hybrid working environment has definitely changed people's behaviours. So there's more people catching the bus overall, they're just catching it less often. We continue to challenge ourselves around DSIs, or death and serious injuries. These are not going well for the people of Auckland because they're the ones that experience the death and the injury. Maori procurement we continue to focus on, as is maintaining progress against capital budget. Performance metrics, you can see the patronage there and boardings. Likewise, you can see on this slide that it's growing across all modes, which is really encouraging. That's both month-to-month and the rolling 12-month average. You can see the trend lines, all the trend lines are going in the right direction. So I think you should be pleased with the return on investment in that respect. Likewise, reliability. So you can see those before you. Our target's 95%. We're achieving throughout August just over that. And that's the number to highlight, and we're in a world of pain on this. In August last year, we were at just under 85% reliability. Collectively, we acknowledge that with you, and I'm grateful for the investment and bringing that back to where it needed to be with the drivers in particular and the services overall. I refer you to the transport safety data. Oh, sorry. Actually, I might give this to you, Stacey. Yeah, otherwise I'll just keep rolling.
Well, good. So in terms of our transport safety data, and over the last 12 months to September 2023, we had 665 people were killed or seriously injured on our roads compared to 583 the previous year. And that's an increase of 14% year on year. 55 people were killed and 610 seriously injured. 86% of the DSI did occur on the local roads. Now, I know we talked about it before, but it's pretty astounding when you actually look at the motorcycle data. There has been a 700% increase in motorcycle deaths over the last year in comparison. So going from 2 to, I think, 16 in terms of that. So it's quite astounding. That does correlate to what we saw when we looked at new motorcycle registrations. But it is quite shocking. In terms of what we call people outside of the vehicle, vulnerable road users, the percentage in comparison to people in cars versus outside of the cars has relatively stayed the same, but it has shifted in terms of what we're seeing to more motorcycle-related injuries. And that is something that obviously we got a lot more questions around. Obviously, in tougher economic times, people do look for more efficient and cost-effective means of travel, and therefore you can see that in terms of that new registration data. So a lot of new motorcyclists potentially entering our network and weaving in and out of traffic or the like. So it is something that needs a broader focus and a targeted strategy in terms of how we work with our other road safety partners in order to be able to address what we're seeing through the data. Go to the next one. In terms of the local board view for the last 12 months to August 2023, the top 6 of the 21 local boards represented 50% of the DSI. The local boards with the largest were Albert Eden, and that had a 105% increase from 21 to 43, Papakura from 19 to 31, and Wairamata from 13 to 21. Where fatalities have occurred, Henderson, Massey, Otara Papatoe had the highest of 200%, so from 2 to 6 and 3 to 9 fatalities respectively. Serious injuries grew the fastest for people cycling, from 30 to 44 in the last 12 months. In terms of obviously sort of addressing, in terms of that, we all know that our road safety budgets have been seriously minimised in the current budgets. So we are looking at more sort of passive measures in terms of education and how we can work with our communities in terms of addressing these sort of more localised issues and what's happening on local roads.
Thank you. So just draw your eye to the capital expenditure program. I'm going to take that as read. I don't think we need to dwell on that. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. But we're building our capital program and the momentum up. We're talking about how we will communicate clearly with Aucklanders around the upcoming season for renewals and maintenance across the road network. We want them to understand that we'll be out there, that we'll be doing this work, and that we'll be addressing some of the issues that we got overwhelmed with addressing in terms of standard renewals and maintenance with last year's flooding and wet weather. So there's a program there that is underway, and we want Aucklanders to understand that we're on that job. You'll see operating performance to date is favourable, so we're holding our operating performance as you would expect. It's favourable for a couple of reasons, both revenue and on expenditure management, and you can see where our focus is over the balance of this year, which is not only full reinstatement of bus services, but actually building the patronage on those services and continuing to address revenue from both parking and enforcement, and those discussions will come back up again through the LTP, and we remain committed to already budgeted cost savings, which you'll see there. I've asked if we can put these couple of additional slides in, and the point behind it is, if I reflect on the last 6 months, a significant amount of effort has gone in communicating clearly with Aucklanders that we've heard them, talking to issues as they affect Aucklanders at the individual level, at the community group level, at the business level, and leaning into those issues. We have, with your support, significantly invested in restoring public transport services, We've really leaned into restoring flood recovery works, and the combination of that, this is the SOI, I thought I was on the next slide. I'm going to go straight to this one, and if we need to, we can come back to that one. The combination of all these efforts has resulted in a turn in how Auckland Transport, part of the Auckland Council family, is perceived in the public domain. And I'm keen that you see this. I want you to understand the impact that you have in the way that you invest through Auckland Transport to deliver services and outcomes. So you can see here, satisfaction over the last quarter has increased 9% to 40%. You can see now that the gap between satisfaction and dissatisfaction is all but closed. That is a very good result if we think about the trend line over the last 12, 15 months. The difference between the dissatisfaction and satisfaction has significantly reduced. You can see that the number of people claiming that AT now listens in response to Aucklanders' needs has improved by 10% to 34%. These statistics are really encouraging for Auckland Transport in the way that we are facing into the expectations of Aucklanders, and I think that we are responding to your expectations of us. And I draw your eye to this one as well, which talks to disruptions on the network, and you'll have known about the number of disruptions, whether they were shootings, weather, or technical failures on the rail network, or it could be staffing shortages on all three networks, but particularly ferry and train networks. And the powerful thing is here, Aucklanders are now becoming less critical of Auckland Transport as we front into and lean on this. And my point in sharing this is I want you to see that we're addressing these. I want you to have confidence that we are pushing and leaning hard in the right direction, and to say thank you for your support in doing that. I will just drop back to this slide to acknowledge our statement of intent. We undertake to report publicly on this. You can see that, and I'm happy to take any questions on it. Our objective being to be quite clear around how we're going against those metrics. So on that note, I feel like I've whizzed through it, but we've got two very important presentations, one around PT growth and the other one around the strategic case for rail, so I prefer to give them the time. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
All right, and we can oblige with that. And we've got Councillors Walker, Turner, Henderson, Fletcher and Foley. And Member Ashby.
Sure, so you've got a new operator on the ferries close to Auckland, the 2 runs and Explores running. How's that going, okay?
Really good. Yeah,
Great.
they've integrated really well into the network, and their reliability has been fantastic. So we've definitely seen a really good introduction to the network.
So that was a good move in respect of Fuller's relinquishing from that run. Is there any prospect around reinstatement of the Gulf Harbour run on that sort of basis, where other operators move in?
Look, we're definitely considering how we move forth. I mean, obviously we have the Ferry Accelerated program, and we have a number of conversations around that. What we will be doing, because given there has been a lot of interest in this, is we are going to be bringing a plan, like a full plan, to give everybody an update on the ferry service network. There's been considerable change happen over the last few years, both in terms of contracting, investing in terms of obviously our own fleet and getting that kicked off with new technologies, as well as our forward procurement program. So we will be bringing that here so everybody understands in terms of what that forward view is going to look like, and of course the journey we've had to date to improve services.
Any other brief question? Really good that you recovered from that cyber security incident. Any idea of where it was from? if it's not commercially sensitive, and I can't see it being commercially sensitive because there was no commercial transaction involved other than ransomware, which didn't succeed.
We don't know where it came from. It could have come from Glenfield, or it could have come from. It could have come from.
The internet's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. My point is, it could be anywhere, Wayne. And to be frank, I'm not interested in finding out where it came from. The fact is that we managed that really, really well, and there's no benefit in us understanding. What we do have to understand is how we ensure our systems continue to tighten. The fact is that they were tight already. Nobody got any information they shouldn't have got. We managed the distributed denial of service attack really well with our partners. To me, that was the single most important thing. We didn't pay a cent.
Councillor Turner?
Thank you. Just a quick question about that staggering 700% increase in bike accidents. Has there been a change in the definition of what a bike is? Like, no, so it doesn't include scooters or anything like that? No, okay.
No change to the definition. We can see that obviously a lot more motorcyclists are on our roads, and you can see that in terms of that new registration data, which started to pick up in 21, and it's sort of stayed relatively the same. So I would suggest a big component of it is less experienced motorcyclists.
Member Ashby?
Thank you. Just two from me. The first, on Māori procurement targets, which is 2%. I appreciate you haven't met the target, but did I hear you correctly that you're making progress? So is the indicator going up or going down or staying?
It's probably level, to be fair, but it's an area that we've remained committed to progress on. It's an area that we've addressed forthrightly in our supplier code of conduct, that we will procure the services of others, but we also expect them to support these outcomes through the contracts and the way that they employ their subcontractors or subconsultants. So it's an area, member, that we remain committed to, and the best way of maintaining our focus on this one is to shine a light on it as we do. We're not satisfied with not met.
Thank you. And just one more. I understand, it's been quite successful Te Reo Māori rollout out west and north, but there's a bit of a gap in the south. And just reflecting, on the Auckland plan target for our other, one of our 3 national languages to be rolled out and supported. Could you just talk to why there's that hasn't happened in the south?
Where was it in the south?
On the southern line?
In terms of across the train network or in terms of the buses?
Buses.
Yeah, so I mean they are going through a program of rollout and they will be done. I think we're pretty close to completion. I will update on that though in terms of the timeline. Yeah.
So there's no issue with delivery of that on the southern line that you're aware of?
No.
Timing.
Councillor Henderson?
Thank you, Chair. DSI data looks like 14% growth is the headline figure here, unfortunately. Do we feel like we have a plan to turn it around, and are we sort of checking in on that plan to check that it's still fit for purpose and it's going to work?
Thank you for your question. In terms of do we have a plan, yes we do. It is hinged hugely in terms of collaboration with others, and I think that's the really important thing, as well as funding. It's not a one thing's going to make a huge difference. I think in terms of what we have ahead, obviously with reduced funding and also potentially some changes, legislative levers, I think the biggest opportunity we actually have is enforcement. And we do work closely with NZ Police and the road policing teams, and we have seen increased performance on that this year. And one of the biggest opportunities we have is to actually think about where it's a lot like the parking conversation we've had in terms of our fines and penalties. Fines and penalties when it comes to speeding infringements and the likes are extremely low in comparison to everywhere else in the world. So the behavioural change shift needs to happen, and with that, in terms of the consequence, needs to change for it. And in order to be able to do that effectively, that needs to change. So we did a lot of work on that last year, and it does require legislative change to make that happen. It needs to happen. It hasn't been changed for decades. And we also need to prioritise in terms of a rollout of what I call point-to-point technology, because police can't be everywhere, so making sure we have more passive enforcement measures, we will definitely get the behavioural change, and that's what I think is the biggest tool we have right now.
Two more quick ones. Thank you, Chair. So would AT, therefore, given that answer, advocate for increased enforcement measures for road policing, more police on patrolling streets?
I don't think we can rely on people being there. There's so many other things going on in the police world as well. So what we can do, though, is try and prioritise, I think, in terms of that passive enforcement measures. Yeah. Because you've got enforcement more places more often that you're not relying on somebody to be there to do. Yeah.
I get that, but we are talking about DSI. I mean, anyway, I'll leave that one. Can I just ask one more thing? In terms of our data collection, we've got DSI by local board, but do we have it by other metrics, say age, gender, these things?
Yeah, we do. We've pretty much topped the data every which way. So we have comprehensive reporting, and you'll see what we publish monthly in terms of our AT board reports. There is a number of dashboards there. It goes into a lot of detail, including contributing factors. So, yeah.
I'd just ask a favour, if I can, Chair, if that could be circulated to councillors, because I know it's in the reports, but a specific effort for that, because this is a crisis. Aucklanders are dying on our roads, and we've got to turn it around somehow. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fletcher.
Councillor Turner asked my question, but I wonder, Tracy, whether you can give us any further insight. That figure of 700% increase with motorcyclists, is there any further breakdown on age groups, on the parts of the region where these are occurring? Can you provide more information on that, please?
Yes, absolutely we can. We can provide more of a detail down on that segment in terms of where they're occurring, age range, etc. So yes, we can.
Councillor Foley.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dean and Stacey, for your presentation. My questions will follow on very much from Councillor Henderson's, but I just want to start by commending you as well on a positive increase in a lot of those performance metrics, and especially on the reliability one. Really good to see that really high. And I've been hearing from people in my community how they are enjoying the experience of catching the bus and catching our public transport. In particular, I wanted also to pass on thanks from our community when the AT Hop cyber attack happened. A lot of people panicked a little bit because they didn't know what was going on. But what I heard back was that your staff, the bus drivers, the train drivers, everybody was really helpful and really compassionate and helped to calm everyone down and got people to where they needed to go. So I really commend you for that. My questions did relate to DSI and the transport safety. My local board is up there alongside Councillor Henderson's as the two worst in terms of the increase in death. So I'd also like to see a breakdown of that, because I'd like to understand what were the driving causes behind those deaths. Were they motorcyclists as well, or were they in cars? So all of that information would be really good to have as well. And I am concerned too, I know that the budgets were cut, but in terms of what we can do to address those issues. And they're in areas of high deprivation, areas that don't have a lot of money. The local boards in those areas probably don't have a lot of money to support as well. But it would be good for us as decision makers to understand what we might be able to do in a more targeted way and target our funding to those areas that really need it most. Kia ora. Don't know if you want to respond to that.
Absolutely, we can provide you with a lot more information to your area. Yeah.
Councillor Hills.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. First of all, just a brief comment. Congratulations again on the patronage data, especially huge uptick it feels at the moment. And just on that ransomware attack, I personally got caught out a couple of times when thought I was back, had money on, and then it turned red, and the drivers always made me feel like I wasn't the councillor stealing free rides. So although embarrassing, I know that it was happening to a lot of people, and it's fixed for me and others now. So just on that, is there any insurance or anything that we can pick up from lost revenue there, or is it kind of, we're just going to have to write that off? Because obviously a lot of people had the issue.
I will start in terms of, I guess, lost revenue. It was actually quite minimal in the scheme of things. And so a lot of the time, people could still tag on and tag off. And in terms of those auto top-ups and how they worked, the majority go through that. So yes, there was some revenue loss in terms of that, but not to the degree that we actually had anticipated.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I'd just add is that you can't insure against lost revenue, so we won't be able to recover that. But the issue is with our insurers, because we did invest in rebuilding parts of our system to ensure that any legacy ransomware was not present. It's with our insurers, and we'll take that through the time-honoured process.
Just on that, and it may be really brief because I know Councillor Watson won't like a long answer, but on the ransomware, much like the water care urgent action, could you just go through just briefly what it took the staff to deal with? I know they were working round the clock, and it was extremely intense work to get that sorted, especially that first week.
How to do that very briefly. I think if I was to capture it, there was a team that were working literally 24/7. There wasn't just an NZ-based team, there was people overseas with our partners, which we really appreciated. The number of servers that we needed to rebuild that part of our system required us to import those because they weren't all available in New Zealand, so we had to move very, very quickly to deal with that. We were meeting several times a day as a crisis management team to ensure that we're on message around what we need to do internally, what we needed our suppliers to do. We put a lot of thought in how we were going to communicate with the public, and our strategy was to go out there and tell the story. So I don't want us to underestimate, it wasn't just a technical issue, it was also about how we assured people, and our message was quite singular: tag on and tag off just as normal, and if there's an issue, we'll deal with the issue. It's a back office issue, not a foreground issue. Public transport still is running, it's just how we collect the revenue. And we were confident in those early days that they hadn't been able to get into any confidential information, so that was the other assurance. So it lasted 10 days very intensely. We thought we had it under control. Distributed denial of service came in, and we managed that within probably a couple of days. There was a tail on matters that we needed to deal with. So when you rebuild a system, you also learn about the system that had previously been there. There's a few wrinkles in that. That's why the topping up of hop cards and some of the issues didn't quite work as seamlessly as you would expect. But it was a very intense period over a couple of weeks, and I'm very proud of what the team put together. And it's not just the IT team, it was the comms team, it was our suppliers, it was a public transport team. It was full on, and I think AT deals with those issues very, very well. In the same way, I saw the same DNA, the same approach, the same focus when we had the shooting downtown, when we have the floods. This is something you can be confident as governors. That's my short answer.
Thank you, and it was important to highlight two quick questions, one that doesn't need an answer. Could we please have and you've given it before presented, but could we have a bit more granular data, if possible, on the DSI, on the areas we have put in safety improvements versus not? I know it's difficult, but I know there has been a trend of where we've actually put in safer speeds or pedestrian crossings or
what the impact is. Yep,
yeah,
we can do that.
And that'd be good if we could all have that. And the last question is, could Stacey, I know you've told us 1,000 times, but there's still a bit of empty bus conversation going on. Could you just give us a brief reason why sometimes you'll see an empty bus within a system that needs to feed into the busier buses, so buses going back to depots and things?
Absolutely, I can. And so I do understand the sentiment about empty buses. Often what people are seeing in terms of that is you got your peak buses. Your peak buses, as an example, might go to the city, or they might go to a transition point, yeah? They still have to go back to where they started from to start their next route, and so they run there in service. So what people are likely seeing is on the out that they're seeing empty buses. There might be one or two buses there, but you've got to pay for that bus to get back there. That bus needs to get back there. It's best to run that bus in service. So an example, I guess, yeah, in terms of that, when I sort of looked at some of that data the other day, I was really pleased to see that actually out of 180 something odd routes that we do run, 50 of them are moving more than what they did in 2019. So yes, do we have some buses on our network that don't obviously move as many people? Yes, we do, of course we do. And there's many reasons why for that in terms of it. But if you think your buses are running empty, then ask us. We'll give you good data in terms of what that patronage looks like and break it down by time of day to help explain that. But that is often the case, is they'll be A, out of service, or B, they will be going on the out, whatever that out is, at the points of the day. Thanks.
Councillor Williamson?
Yeah, two things. If you're in business and you're looking at your sales figures or any other graph like that, the most valuable thing you can do is have a comparison with the whole market. Are you losing relative to the rest of the market? And I would have thought in your graphs it would be worthwhile showing us motorbike fatality graphs for New Zealand, and on a comparator that's meaningful. Can't be on per capita because that doesn't mean much, but on a vehicle kilometres travelled for motorcycle basis, you can then say, because if we've gone from, what was your number, 2 to 16 or something, that's 2 data points, which is terribly bad to compare with and give it 700%. But what's happening across New Zealand? Is the motorcycle fatality rate growing at that level, or is there something unusual about Auckland? And if we're doing something wrong, that would show up, as opposed to it's a generalised trend across the nation. So I think we should do it. And finally, can I make, I think, my 5th now plea? I've asked, could I please get some revenue passenger kilometres and available seat kilometres for the bus routes, so I can actually put to bed some of the myths about why some of the buses are empty. I still haven't been able to get it.
Do you want to give them a date? Can I please just, I guess, clarify in terms of what would be helpful, because we have literally tons of data and different dashboards. What will be useful to understand that? Because I can break it down. I actually looked at your 712 the other day and moved 24,000 last month, and that's in comparison to, I think it was something like 37,000 August 2019. Of course, it's connected to Panmure Station. Panmure Station, of course, we don't have any trains running on that part of the Eastern Line, so it makes sense that it's down on numbers. But in terms of like a cost ratio for that service, it was really sharp. It was like cost per passenger was circa $2.23 or something. So it's quite an efficient service. So any route you want to know particularly, I can give you really good data on to help understand it. And in terms of top 100, bottom 100, etc., chop it any way you want from commerciality perspective as well.
Yeah, I mean, cross purposes here, I had asked and I had been given assurance, I think, twice at one of these meetings and then one with the board meeting, that if you just gave me the data, the raw data for the whole lot, I've got a good analytics system that will go in and grab routes, will go and grab days, time of day of week stuff, and draw whatever I need out of it. It's way too much stuff that most people would be interested in. There's few people that are as weird as I am in terms of data analytics, but it's just something that interests me.
All right, that's been duly noted. Councillor Ferry?
Thanks. I sort of share some of the concerns that have been raised about the deaths and serious injuries, but I don't really have any new questions in that space from the ones that I've asked in the past, so I won't dwell on that. But yeah, obviously remains a major concern. The motorcycle stuff specifically, though, my understanding is that this has actually been a trend for some years now, particularly as, excuse me if I use this word, the boomers often are now buying motorbikes that they remember from their youth, enjoying riding a motorbike. They're getting to a time in their life where they're like, I want to get back on a motorbike. Those bikes are now bigger, faster. The road conditions are different. There's a lot more people on the roads, and they're not always getting the updated training that they need to ride them, and that is a factor. So my understanding is that ACC has been doing a lot of work in that space to try and work with that particular cohort. Is Auckland Transport involved in that conversation? What are we doing to help those conversations happen?
Yeah, absolutely we are, thank you. And so we have done work with ACC, and our teams continue to do work with AC and Waka Kotahi in terms of their Ride to Survive program, in terms of that. And I know they've had a number of, workshops and drop-in centres, and it's trying to get the target market to be there as well. I think that's the important thing. It's not a trend, I think, that's going to go away. It's about how we can improve the education and understanding around it. And it's also the driver behaviour. We have seen over the last year mood of the nation potentially in terms of driving behaviours that does come out and how they drive and more risky behaviour.
And just to clarify then, so is there an opportunity there for some shared comms and stuff like that? I mean, I'm just thinking about, if we've got some audiences who might be catching the bus during the week, we've got their hot card details, we know they're in that demographic, might just slap a bit of, check out Ride to Survive on the bottom of the e-news or something like that. There's some opportunities there anyway. Thank you.
Right, just to close the loop on that one from me, Stacey, the motorcyclist fatalities and injuries have been coming through pretty steadily in our reporting this year. 700% increase, and I really appreciate the data you've got and the explanation you've got, but it's clear to me there's quite a lot of speculation in as to what's going on here. As far as motorcyclists go, they have been disproportionately represented in fatalities since day dot. You only have to go back to the 70s and that, when there was a lot more people proportionately travelling by motorcycles. There was the view at that time that it was young guys buying big motorcycles, inexperienced, jumping on them, getting on their bikes and crashing fairly early on in their motorcycling careers. I'm pretty sure it's a lot more complex situation now that go to some of the things that you mentioned in terms of more vehicles on the road, perhaps more impaired drivers, that has made it more different. If you look at some of the fatalities, sometimes it's very experienced motorcyclists who have just been taken out and have had no chance to survive. So if there's anything that can give us a bit more of a sense of what's happening in Auckland in terms of the age, the locations where these things are happening, plus any details that go to the specifics of the accidents, I think that would be really useful for the committee, because that's a real crisis. And in terms of communications, if we've got the information, then I think it's going to be helpful to get it out there, because the last thing we want is people buying motorcycles and going out into what's a dangerous situation. It is a dangerous environment. You ride a bike, you know that, and often you don't have a choice in what the other motorist does, and you're a goner. So it would be really nice if we could find who's at even the error, where the fault and the fatalities occurred, and if it is the things that we're talking about, well then we're a better understanding, but certainly that extent of loss on our road is the most concerning thing that I see here at the moment, so thank you for that. And we can maybe get some feedback.
Mr. Chairman, can I just correct you on something? If you go to the NZTA website,
motorcycle fatalities, serious injuries and that were collapsing and going down, right up until 2001. The graphs will show you, and then they all turned around in 2001 for every one of the categories and are growing again. So something back in 2001 changed.
Cell
Could be cell phones, I don't know.
Mr Mayor?
When I was the chairman of the LTSA, we used to think about this a lot. And we had a graph of deaths versus age, and it went up like that. And not many people, when they're really babies, die, but between sort of 15 and 28, you get this peak, and it runs down, it runs out really flat, okay? Then we had a graph of motorcyclists, and it goes up like that, and it goes down around there, and then it goes up like that and down again. And there's all the guys, 45 to 55, who thought they'd get back into riding a motorbike, and the one that they grew up on was a 350, which is what I did, and then they go and buy a 1200 Harley Davidson, they fall off and die. And it's those guys, mate, and it's statistical, and it's on the graph that the LTSA used to keep. And you look around, you find guys at 45 to 55, the power's gone up, and the reaction time's gone down, and there they go, bang.
Yeah, oh well. Okay, so I'll move that we receive the Auckland Transport update. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Walker. Anyone want to speak to it? No? Okay, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Stacey and Dean. We now have a couple of reasonably substantive items coming up here. The first one is the public transport growth program, and you'll see that it's most fundamental. The purpose of this